Hey, my name is Jay Gordon. Welcome back to Azure FunBytes. This time we're going to talk about Visual Studio Code. Let's get into it.
Visual Studio Code, or VS Code, is a streamlined code editor with support for development and operations like debugging, task running, and version control. VS Code is free, available on Windows, Mac, and Linux. You can use VS Code to handle anything you want to write, thanks to integrated programming languages support right out of the box. Popular languages like Python, C++, C#, JavaScript, Ruby, PHP, and more.
Hi, I'm Jason Han with the Azure Cloud Advocacy Team. Visual Studio Code provides a number of extensions that allow you to integrate your development process directly into Azure. You can create resources, interact with the Azure CLI, or even right-click deploy a web app. It's all there for you in Visual Studio Code.
Extensions allow you to install or even create your own plugins to extend the features of VS Code. Today we'll focus on Microsoft Azure Extensions. There are large collections of extensions you can find in the VS Code marketplace that make it easy for you to build and host applications on Azure. I'd like to deploy a web app from VS Code to Azure App Service, so I'll install the Azure account and the Azure App Service extensions. Once I install my extension, I can go ahead and authenticate my session with Azure using my credentials and multi-factor device. Once that's complete, I can right-click on my app's root directory and select Deploy to Azure Web App. I'll configure the service plan, the web app, and then VS Code will deploy my web app and provide me details when it's completed. And just like that, my app is online.
For more information, documentation, and even to get $200 in free Azure credit, go ahead and click this link below. Once again, my name is Jay Gordon. You're watching Azure FunBytes, and I'll see you next time.
Wow, that seems like a while ago. And it was, but I recorded that video a while ago. But you know what? All the information, it's still super relevant. It's part of one of those big fundamentals that makes up Microsoft Azure. And so today, I'm going to kind of keep going with that. So once again, my name's Jay Gordon. I am your host for Azure FunBytes. We meet every Thursday, 11 a.m. on the Pacific, or here on the right coast, the East Coast, we meet at 2 p.m. Once again, we're the right coast. Anyhow, so to join me in my coastal elitism today, and to counter it in any way he feels like, I've got a guest who's going to help me with some VS Code, some command line, and maybe just a cool conversation. So welcome to the show, my guest. It's Brian Benz. Hey, Brian.
Greetings, Jay. How are you today?
You know, I'm doing really well. I'm super glad you can be here with me. You know, we used to travel all over the place together. And I used to see you a few times a year, maybe more than a few times. And, you know, I always enjoyed it. And so it's a bummer that we don't get to spend time hanging out. But, you know, we do get an opportunity to do lots and lots of fun stuff online if we'd like to. And so we found an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, you mentioned that video in the intro was recorded a while ago, and I just want to take a moment and hopefully not get too personal, but celebrate some accomplishments here. You have really, you know, the man in that video is a different man than I'm seeing here on screen today. You know, you've done a great job. You're an inspiration. You've lost some weight. You've gotten more healthy, and I need all the inspiration I could get. So thank you for being an inspiration. You've done
I appreciate that. I'm trying my best to be the best I can. And I think that's the way I look at it. Just trying to be the best Jay that I can be. And so every week I notice little differences myself when I see these shows, because I have to watch myself so much, which is awkward. But, you know, I think that's kind of like where we are right now. The world's a little bit more awkward because, you know, we're doing things like we're working online first. We're having conversations online first. We're trying to find ways to stay, you know, communicating and know what's going on. And so one of the great parts about this show is it's very interactive. And so, everybody, I want you to remember, we've got a poll like we do every week. What's your favorite IDE, integrated development environment? We're going to talk about IDEs today. The other thing we're going to be talking about, obviously, is we're going to be talking a little bit about command line and CLI stuff. I really, really love the CLI stuff because, you know what, I'm a Bash nerd. I've been a Bash nerd, and so I've always appreciated having the CLI as something that I go to first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But before we get into this, I wanted everybody to know, just so we can kind of get started, you have a show. It's called
Yes.
Launch Space. It's right here on Learn TV. And it's coming up very soon. You're going to be having a session on CLI. And so everybody right down there is where you can find the information. I'm going to put it in the chat as well so that you can follow up on it. But I'm really excited to hear what you've got to talk to me about today.
Yes, so I'm going to skim over a bunch of different things. I got a ton of little tips and tricks for people. Some things people haven't seen before, I'm sure, and a few things you might have already. But yeah, I'm going to work with the command line. I've been working with the command line forever, since it was the only option when you work with software. You know, I remember the early days of Java, you would edit things in Notepad and then compile in the command line to see how you did. But yeah, things have come a long way since then, and I'm going to highlight some of those things today. I did want to say, as Jay mentioned, I'm going to cover some of the CLI stuff today, and I'm going to give you a little teaser of what's happening with some new features in the CLI. But to get more info on the new features, we have 3 people who are going to give some demos from the product team, the actual people who build these tools, on March 9th at 2 p.m. And if you follow the link in the chat right now, you'll get there. So it's ACA MS, the Launch Space Azure CLI. But yeah, let's get started. So I've got my I've got a little bit of a slide deck, about 9 slides for the hour, so I don't really have a lot. I'm going to keep this really casual, and I'm just going to show you some cool stuff. So I'm going to start
loose and conversational, as they say.
Yes, absolutely. So here I am. I'm in File Explorer, and I apologize because it's tiny, but that doesn't matter. Anybody who's ever been in Windows File Explorer knows what this looks like. Here's a couple of tips and tools that you might not know. Quite often when you're going to find a directory that you want to work with, like this one's in Documents, GitHub, and then the name of a repo I have, I can actually click on this. If I want to open a command window, I can just type CMD, and it actually opens. Now, because I'm sharing my screen, it opens on my other screen, but here it is. So, and it opens in C users, Benz, documents, and then the name of the repo. So I'm actually in the repo now, and I can do stuff. That's okay if command line's not your thing. If you want to use Bash, you can type WSL. And once again, I have to pull this window over. But you get the Windows Subsystem for Linux open in that directory.
I think WSL is one of the cooler things that Windows has had. I'm not a tremendous Windows user anymore. I still, though, appreciate how much Windows has come to really be a developer-first operating system. It's really a tremendous advantage for people nowadays to be able to have all these integrated services like WSL, how many extensions there are for PowerShell to work with things like Azure, which I think is just really one of the big selling points if you want to use Windows now. While all operating systems that have the tools you need are valid, I mean, let's be honest with you, that there's some really damn good ones within Windows.
Yeah, well, I like the philosophy that Microsoft's had lately. I joined 8 years ago to a very different Microsoft, and since then, we've integrated a lot of different things. You're using Bash, you're a Bash expert, great. We have a tool for you. You can run Linux on Bash. You can actually use VS Code to connect into your Linux on Bash and edit files using VS Code. And I'll show you that little demo of that later.
Yeah, the fact that you can have build containers come together when you need to do builds right within VS Code. If you need a terminal, I have caught myself doing this, Brian, and you can make fun of me for it. I've caught myself actually opening Vim inside of it. And I always feel really, really silly, but hey, and like I was telling everybody before, what's your editor? what are you using? What's your IDE? Let me know. We've got a couple votes so far, but I'd love to hear what else you're using. So anyway, Brian, Windows, show me a little more.
So Vim is, it's fine. The idea here is you can use anything you want. I personally know, I used to work at IBM many years ago. There are so many people who are working with that actually run their entire company. It's actually a little scary how much they run their company on Bash, on shell scripts. Like the company would just basically not function if their Bash died. It's just a lot of yeah.
It's funny for me to remind myself of or think about when you and I were on the Ignite tour.
Yeah.
And on the Ignite tour, we talked a little bit about migrations and moving stuff into the cloud and like why people move their web apps into the cloud. And I always said one of the big things that's terrifying in a migration situation is when you find out about ye old deploy bash script.
And everyone's like, don't touch that. Don't touch it.
It's the ye old deploy bash script. So, hey, if you're currently watching and you're in the chat, let me know if you had one of those, bash deploy scripts that have kept the company afloat, because I've definitely worked in that situation before.
Yep, me too, many times. I used to go in. I used to do a lot of big data work where we had to take a huge multi-terabyte file and split it using the bash split command, and split into different pipelines, and then load the pipelines. And we wouldn't have been able to do any of that without Bash. So it's a great tool. But if you in parallel to the Bash world, there's also the PowerShell world, where a lot of people will work with PowerShell almost as long. And they are just as good at running their company with PowerShell as the Bash folks are. And then there's the Windows command line in the console. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But one of the main things I want to talk about today is the CLI. The Azure CLI. It's the main way that you can interact with the Azure cloud and any services that you might be using on that. It's written in Python. It's open source. It's on GitHub. They accept PRs. And the nice thing about it is you can mix it in with your Bash. You can mix it in with your command. It's Bash compatible. It has grep, awk, JQ, everything all built in. It's kind of cool the way it works. It runs on multiple different things as well. So let's talk about what it runs on real quick, and then I'm going to show a few demos of it in action, actually. So,
and hey, Rick Rose says, yes, had replaced the Bash yield, the Bash deploy script with a Perl script, drop runtime from 5 to 15. Yeah. It's too fast. I definitely know. We always think of things that like, this is too good to be true, huh?
Yeah. Absolutely, yes. And Perl, that'll invoke some reactions as well, I'm sure, as the person who commented knows. But yeah, it's a wild open world out there, and whatever tools, that's the philosophy that we were having in Microsoft. Whatever tools you're good at, we're not going to tell you, great, you have to take everything throw it away and start over with Azure. You can use pretty much anything you want and integrate our CLI and our other tools with it. And that's one of the great things. This Azure CLI runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux. And it runs equally as well on all of them because it's written in Python. So,
and here's one of the things I love, Brian.
Yeah.
The fact that it's here in the Azure shell. So I can just open up Cloud Shell by just going up to here and click Cloud Shell, or I can go to shell.azure.com. And if I just go ahead and I do AZ CLI, AZ, and then just help, we could see that the AZ command is right in here. So we don't even need to do a local installation.
Exactly. Yeah, it's built into the Cloud Shell. I'm going to demo that in a little while, and I'm going to show you one trick you might not know too. So a few things I want to talk about as well. And continuing on the open theme, Microsoft has taken Ubuntu and put it on Windows. It's inside of Windows. It runs on a container, and you can basically access all of your files on your local Windows machine from it. It's called Windows Subsystem for Linux. And the reason why it's called Windows Subsystem for Linux is because DOS is originally called the Windows Subsystem. So anybody who's worked with DOS or the command line in Windows, it's actually, the official name is Windows Subsystem. So rather than just calling it Linux on Windows, that'd be too easy. We called it Windows Subsystem for Linux. Just to make sure it's harder to find. But anyway, it is open source.
Everyone remember this one big fact. Sorry, Brian.
Yeah.
Microsoft loves Linux. Satya said it himself. Microsoft loves Linux.
They do. Yeah. No, it's, once again, it's like whatever you're using, we don't want to be the roadblock for you. We're going to make sure that you can take all your expertise and all your investments in Bash, in Linux, and everything else you have, and just put it on our platform, on Azure and on Windows.
Very important stuff. Like to be able to know that so much translates between different operating systems that different developers may use. One developer may be strong with Linux. Maybe another developer strong using Windows. Somebody else might want to use a Mac only. The fact that all of this is available to them is really important.
Yeah, and I'm going to show you Microsoft Terminal a little bit, which is cool as well because it brings them all together. But the other thing I want to talk about is the Windows console. So I mentioned the console is also called the Windows Subsystem, DOS, the command line, whatever you want to call it in Windows. It's 30 years old now. It's been battle tested. It works well. There's thousands of lines of code that have been replaced with modern C++. And it's always been a great tool. But we also have the Windows Terminal now because people wanted multiple tabs. They wanted to do things like have profiles, themes, and styles and connectivity. So we've actually created this thing called the Windows Terminal. It's not the Microsoft Terminal. It's the Windows because it only runs on Windows and you get it from the Microsoft Store. But I'm going to show you a few little things here in a second. Before I get on to that, let's go into demos because I'm already getting bored with my talk in these slides. All right.
You got it.
So I showed you before the command line. So you can type CMD here. Okay. And then I got to bring this window over here. This window over here. It opens. I'm sharing my screen, so I'm sharing screen 2. And because of this, it pops up on screen 1. There's nothing I can do about that. But anyway. Okay, so I'm in here, and I can do the Azure CLI. Just type AZ, and there it is. It's actually running in there. If I want, I can.
Can you bring your terminal over a little to the right? Just a little bit. You're cut off just a slight bit. There you go. Now I can see it.
Okay, now it's popping. I don't know.
Beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful. There you go. So you can see all the Azure CLI, all the commands you can use. And I'm going to get into some of these commands a little bit, how you actually edit them and stuff like that. But if I want to use PowerShell as well, before I was showing this PowerShell, you can go in here and do PowerShell. So this is how, AZ. So it's in here as well. And then, of course, WSL I can do too. Just type WSL here. And it, as I mentioned before, this is opening in a directory that I'm in now in my file explorer. And now, one thing to note, you do have to install the Azure CLI separately here using an apt-get because it's the subsystem, so it's not technically part of Windows. You have to install it on Windows and on Linux. Which I've already done a long time ago, but that's just one little point of order there. One of the nice things here is I can also, and Jay showed the Cloud Shell. Let me show that real quick. Too many windows open. If I go to
everyone, don't forget, while you're watching Brian do this, we've got our poll. If you haven't taken it yet or you want to leave comments, please head over to Learn TV. Everything that you need as far as today's links and information about the future show that Brian's doing, it's all on there. So make sure you head over to the Learn TV site And that's, of course, aka.ms/learntv. Back to you.
Yes. Thank you. So here's the shell. You go to shell.azure.com. You have to have an Azure account. And I'm already logged in. But I also have AZ here. So I can access the Azure CLI from here, of course. This is from any browser and also from your phone. There is an app that you can get, the Azure app, that allows you to have access to the command line and to CLI as well. But
I love that. Yeah. I love that. You know, I've used other clouds applications in the past, and one of the things that I saw that was like not there was that particular feature, being able to go right in to the Cloud Shell from my phone and still have a full featured kind of experience. I think that was huge.
I found it's a good thing and a bad thing. So here's why. It was like a long time ago now, a year ago. It seems like forever. I was on vacation. That's when people used to travel, remember? And it's the first time I've ever not taken my laptop on vacation, which, but of course I needed to get into Azure and do some things on Kubernetes. And I was actually able to do everything on my phone. I could pull up the resources and edit the Kubernetes cluster using this CLI inside my phone. It was pretty mind-blowing. So it's a good and bad thing that you can access from your phone.
Fussing around with YAML on your phone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's great. But so not only do you have the AZ CLI in here, you also have Terraform. A whole bunch of things are built in. When I went to shell.azure.com, it actually went out to a storage account and got a container for me. And then it connected that container to a storage that I have all my personal stuff loaded onto. Mm-hmm. So you can have a whole bunch of default things that Microsoft provides in your Cloud Shell. You can also have things that you add custom. Now, if I'm getting tired of looking at the CLI here, let's say I've got something in here that, as you can see, dir works, commands work as well as bash, but I can actually do both and look up things. But if I just want to see everything visually, which is sometimes useful, what the heck do I have in here? This is something not a lot of people know about. You do code dot. And here I am in a subset version of Visual Studio Code inside of my Cloud Shell, which is awesomely cool, I think, because I can do things like, let's say I need to edit some Markdown. Pretty hard to do unless you're a Vim wizard inside of a bash commands environment. It's kind of cool to be able to do it here. So I can just change this, and I want to change this and just say, that kind of thing. I just hit save. Now that's saved. And I can actually push this back up to my cloud. I can do things like git clone. This is I should mention, this is a clone of a repo that I have. And it's saved in here in my personal storage as part of my Cloud Shell. So I can actually do demos here and edit it as well.
Yeah, you can save all like SSH keys, right there. So if you just, and what I've noticed is when you create virtual machines, a lot of times what will happen is when a VM needs to grab an SSH key that already exists, it kind of will look in that .ssh directory and know that you're providing that. And then from what I've seen, it'll use like the last key if you don't specify one. And just so everybody knows, one of the docs that we've shared in the chat is this create virtual machines with the Azure CLI. It's a tutorial. It'll get you a lot of information about how to kind of build a VM without actually even have to working in the portal. Just next, last. Just type out all the parameters that you need. The CLI will interact with ARM. ARM will convert what you need into some sort of into the language that ARM works in. And then it'll allow you to export it as a template when you're done.
You can also export CLI from there as well. So that's kind of cool. From the portal, you can export CLI commands. So if you don't exactly know how everything will work, you can set it up in the portal, save it, and then you say create template from the portal, and say, and one of the options is CLI, and it'll actually spit out some CLI for you. Now it's highly parameterized and a few other things, but it's something that you can maybe plug into a bash script. It's kind of cool. But so what I showed you here, I went to AZVM create help, and I was able, and you can see I can do Control plus and everything you can do in a browser. And it just gave me all the help I need for the CLI here as well for creating a VM. As you can see, there's a couple of options, and there's some examples here too, which we'll use in a minute actually. So that's the Cloud Shell. Let me show you how you can do cool things with the Cloud Shell in Visual Studio Code too. So over here, I've got something I'm working on. Anything I'm working on, actually. Let's see. This is a GitHub repo. Let's go to my GitHub action. So this is a GitHub action. It's in YAML. It knows it's in YAML because we're in Visual Studio Code. Now, if I want to interact with this on any with the Azure CLI, I can hit Control backtick, and it actually pops up a command window in Visual Studio Code. There's different options for Visual Studio Code by default, which is command prompt, WSL, git bash, and a couple of PowerShells. There's PowerShell Core and the older version of PowerShell. So you can play around with those, but look at this. I can actually open bash in Cloud Shell as well. So down here, instead of having my regular command line and working on my local computer, now I'm actually out in my Cloud Shell. So it's the same one I was looking at before on the browser, but I'm in Visual Studio Code now. So how is this useful? Let me show you. So we're going to go back here, and I'm going to go back to this help. And here's create an Ubuntu VM using a cloud init script from configuration. So here's one, AZVM create. I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to go into my Visual Studio Code. I'm going to do File New. Okay, so great. So I can edit this, right? But there's also another tool you can do, Save As. And it's going to, if I save this as a .azcli.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yeah. Look at that. Look at this. Now you get all the commands. You can have type ahead here. Let's see.
And for those who may not know what Cloud Init is an industry standard way of actually, the best way I kind of describe it is shoving some script as you boot up your machine. So you can, add metadata, user data, vendor data. I've used it a million times to just like throw some bash into stuff to be able to automate a quick process or even install agents.
Yep. So if you see here, whoops, Z VM. So I can go in here and I can say AZ, and it gives me a type ahead for all this. So if I want VM create, so I got create, capture, convert. So you see you can do type ahead and everything. All you have to do in Visual Studio Code is save it as a .azcli file, and you can do that. Now, one of the cool things I've got, now you notice this is on my local machine, right? I haven't saved anything. This is in Cloud Shell down here, right? So let's say you don't have the Azure CLI installed on your local machine for whatever. Maybe you're using someone else's machine. You can open up Visual Studio Code and you can do some commands here. I've got it set up so when I hit Control-Shift-Z, it actually puts whatever I've got on that line in the command window. And it, of course, is going to give me an error here because I don't have enough parameters. But I could continue to sort of interactively run this and create a VM down here in my Cloud Shell from here. So this is very handy. Let's say, for example, that you have I'll show you a real example, actually. Let's go here. Let's go into my repositories. And this is a repository that I want to clone, right? But I don't have, let's say I have really limited bandwidth, and this is a huge repo, right? So I go in here, I get my clone. Then I can go over here to Visual Studio Code, and I can say, clone. Now I can save this for later, and I can share it with people and whatever, right? Because it's an easy file. Now, if I hit Control-Shift-Z, it actually goes out and clones this into my cloud shell, not on my local machine. So then I have access to this once again on my phone or anywhere else I want, right? Because
you can do your development anywhere you can, and that's another thing we're going to keep talking about actually as we kind of continue through today's session. But I think one of the big things that we're seeing here, Brian, is the fact that no matter where we are, what operating system we're using, or where or how we have to do it, like whether it's on our phone, our computer, if we're on vacation and someone bothers you, that shouldn't be happening. You still know that it's there.
Yep, there it is. So I just cloned it, and I'm not in Visual Studio Code now. I'm in my browser in that code window that I started, but here it is. I've got the whole clone here, and now I can edit the action over here, if I want to, or I could go over here and I can edit the action from my Visual Studio Code as well. It's tons of different options for doing this kind of stuff. So there's all kinds of ways to access your CLI, which I think is pretty darn cool. One
of the things I want to show everybody, just so they can see that the stuff that you do in the CLI and how it's reflected within here. So if we kind of just scroll down to the left of my resource group information, you'll see there's all these different parts and pieces and things, but it's this automation area that we want to talk about, and the fact that it says export template. And so sure, we have a generic ARM template like creation that parameterizes all the things that we need. It gets us stuff for our resources. And then, like Brian mentioned before, it will then create CLI scripts. So right now it's just generating everything based on what I have in here. And see, right here, what we do is go to scripts, and you can see right here, Azure CLI, PowerShell. And now you can actually find out, all the information in the docs, how to actually manage that. Thank you. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, no problem. You just reminded me of one thing. So over here in the Cloud Shell, from shell@azure.com, you can do Bash or PowerShell. I'm showing Bash. You can actually do PowerShell as well from the command line there. So once again, there's this parallel world where Bash or PowerShell run your company. You can actually access everything from shell.azure.com as well and manipulate it from here using the Azure CLI and everything else. So it's pretty cool. There's also all kinds of other things in here. Docker, let's see. There's a Terraform already built in. There's Docker. There's all kinds of things you can use to build here. But the next thing I want to show you actually is, I mentioned before, you can bring all these things together in one place. And let me just pull this over here. All right.
So we got a question here.
Yeah.
And it's from Kevin. So let me bring it up. Hey, Kevin, thank you again. So Kevin asks, from Kevin, can you store pen keys that you need for your app right in SSH into a VM? And absolutely you can.
Yes.
If we bring up the Cloud Shell for a second, and I'll do right here in my browser.
Yeah.
What I could do is just cat.ssh. Oop. Oh, I don't need the cat. I just ls. ls-al.sh, which is just like almost any other kind of system that you're using SSH keys in a Unixy format. But like all these different keys I have that I've needed over the years for different products and different initiatives, I've kept them all here. And so if you do need to store SSH keys, another great way to always be on the go. So I really dig that you can take what you have anywhere.
Yeah, one pro tip. So As you can see, Jay and myself keep a lot of things in their Cloud Shell. If you notice, my Cloud Shell is kind of empty compared to Jay's because I did something kind of stupid, and you can learn from my mistake. I was cleaning up my Azure account.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Jay, I know where I'm going with this. I was looking at my storage, and I had several storage accounts, and one of them I didn't recognize what it was. I tried to open it. It was like, oh, this doesn't seem like, this must be something from, that's just not very important. I deleted it. And that storage account was actually inside my Azure account, keeping all of the stuff that Jay just showed you, all the PIMs, everything. Luckily, I have backups always, but
always have backups. Always be backing up.
My Azure shell is nice and clean these days. Very, very, very zen. Very, unfortunately for me, but yeah, it's one of those things. So you have to be very careful when you do use the storage. If you're going to store PIMs and things like that, as Kevin asked, make sure that you protect that storage account. There are ways in Azure to protect the storage account, so you can't delete it without confirming. Mine wasn't set up like that. By default, it's not. It's just a storage account. So yeah, be careful with that. It's unlimited power and unlimited responsibility when it comes to storage. So yes. Anyway, so getting back to this, I wanted to show you this. This is a Windows terminal, okay? And I mentioned before, you can have a situation where everybody has different things. Everybody has different scripts. But if you need to interact with all of them at the same time, you saw what I had to go through. I had to open the PowerShell, open command, open WSL. I mean, it's not that hard, but what if you could have it all in one single pane of glass? And that's what Windows Terminal actually does for you. So this is my PowerShell.
Completely different than WSL. It's completely different than CMD shell, correct? It's different than even the PowerShell shell.
Well, it's not different. It runs all of them, but it puts a facade on front. So basically, all of the original WSLs, all your profile settings, everything you've got on your command lines are still there, but you've got it all in one place. So I've actually created several profiles here. This is my PowerShell profile. As you can see, you can do annoying backgrounds. This is my default Ubuntu. This is my command line. And this is, well, I guess that's all. Oh, and the Cloud Shell. So I can do that. The font I've chosen is, let's see, 0, because I have multiple tenants. It's a long story, but yeah. So basically, this is my Cloud Shell again. I don't know if this works from here. Let's see. No, it doesn't work from here. But from the terminal, you can actually interact with your PowerShell, Ubuntu, command line, and the Cloud Shell all at once. So this is nice because it makes, if you're working on different things, if you got to update a PowerShell and a command line, you can just put them in here and then cut and paste or copy between them or whatever you need to do. It's very handy. And this is all customizable. So I've actually created some fun customized views here. Here's the flames. This is from a package called libAA in Ubuntu. And I just want to show you can resize the fonts, which is nice. And then I've got one here. This is fun, Star Wars. So this actually runs Telnet. It runs a shell script that runs Telnet inside of Ubuntu. I don't know if anyone's ever seen this before, but some people with way too much time on their hands have gone out and created an entire ASCII version of Star Wars on Telnet. So this is the shell. I open this. It opens a shell script. It connects to this ASCII version of Star Wars via Telnet and runs it in my terminal, which is kind of cool.
One of my favorite ones that I've seen before is the 9cat terminal. If you're not really familiar with it, I've seen it via SSH. Let me show everybody, or not SSH, by a Telnet. It's very silly. It literally is, you provide a URL. I'll look for it, and then it'll just show this in your terminal. It's funny. People who do development, people who do ops, sometimes we need little silly projects to kind of break up the time. I've always liked that. Kind of like also like Cowsay.
Yep.
I don't know if you remember it. That's another really old, silly, like Linuxism, if you will, a Cowsay, and how people used to love installing and called it like I love this article that someone named Jason Richen started, and it's Cowsay is the most important Unix-like command ever.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and here, let's take a look. Cowsay, that's the fun thing about the CLI. So, hey, Brian, we've got about 20 minutes to go. And I want to remind everyone, if they have questions, if they have comments, and we'll look a little bit more at VS Code in a few minutes, especially Codespaces, which I'm totally awesome. I can't wait to see it. Nice. But send your comments, send your questions in the chat. We'd love to hear about it.
Yep. So one thing I want to show you, this is fun. I want to show you how I did it, because this actually has important real life implications. So if you go into your terminal, go into settings, everything's actually controlled by a JSON file. So if I look here, you can see the actual profile. There's all these different profiles. This is where I actually choose what the image is going to be behind the scenes, or what icon is going to be there, the background, the font we're going to use. And by the way, the fonts control what the ligatures look like and everything. But if we go down here to Star Wars, this is Ubuntu for Demos, Ubuntu Star Wars, you can see what I've done. There's a command line I've customized, WSL-EXE, and then I've just got a demo1 shell script, and inside that shell script, it calls a telnet that does that. And if I look at the fireplace one, you can also do things like set up a custom fireplace color scheme. And that's what I did there. So just slightly changed the color scheme as well. So if you want to control the color scheme, the font, the background image, the opacity, all kinds of things you can control from here. You can set up your starting directory, which is extremely useful if you're going back to the same project all the time. So it's all in this JSON file. And if you change it, all the changes happen immediately in the Windows terminal. It picks them up immediately as soon as you save the JSON file. So that's kind of cool. So let's talk about more remote stuff now.
Absolutely.
I'll shut all this down.
Because you know what? The big thing, Brian, is that we're all kind of, and I'll give you I'll take that out for a second so you can set yourself up. We're all kind of working, for the most part, in technology. We tend to be working remote nowadays.
Yeah.
And that means that different types of teams may need to onboard in easier ways, ways that can help encourage collaboration and reduce overhead of onboarding, say, a new employee. Maybe you just started a new project with a bunch of people online, and you need a way for you to collaboratively work on that stuff. Or you need to do something like pair programming, where you work as a team, try to work through a specific debugging an issue, or let's say you got a job interview and you need a friend to help you prep and help you look at some of the code you've written. These are all just like super useful ways of thinking about how to use these tools beyond just, hey, me and my team need to code together. And remember, before Brian gets into it, let us know which IDE you're using. Go over to Learn TV. If you aren't already, you can also leave a question there. Head over there and let me know what VS Code or Visual Studio Atom, maybe NetBeans, or maybe you're grandpa like me. I'm not really a grandpa, but I feel like it when I say this. But I love Vim. It is what it is. I do appreciate VS Code a ton, though. So I know you got something to show me, so I'm going to pop up your screen. All right, Brian?
Yeah. So I showed this briefly earlier, but basically there's a couple ways that Microsoft has created to access remote applications. And so the first way they did it, there's two ways. There's this remote functionality that I'm going to show you in a second, and then there's Codespaces, which is a full IDE in the browser that accesses your GitHub repos. But let's start with VS Code Remote, and I can show you sort of the evolution. So VS Code, of course, most people are aware it's a free open source code editor with a ton of extensions. And if you just search for VS Code online, you'll find it. You can download it. Windows, Mac, and Linux, just like the Cloud Shell. Just like the CLI, it runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux, which is great. But the other functionality that they added probably a year or two ago is being able to remote into applications. So even though Jay loves Vim, there might be times when he doesn't want to use it and he wants to access an application remotely that he's using somewhere else. So what you can do with that, if I go into Visual Studio Code here, over here on the bottom left, there's a little thing, you can't read it. It says open a remote window. When I open the remote window, there's several options here. Remote SSH basically allows you to connect to a VM or any kind of host that uses SSH. You can do remote containers. You can actually dial into a container and manipulate that container inside Visual Studio Code. So of course you can do that with Docker and the Docker CLI, but if you want to actually edit it interactively and cut and paste things from your local machine, this is a cool way to do it. And then there's another thing, which is remote WSL. Remote WSL answers the question that Jay never asked, which is, what if I don't want to use Vim when I'm working with WSL? What if I've got a file to edit in my Unix/Linux instance on my local machine, but I want to edit it using Visual Studio Code and all the extensions I have? I can click on remote, and this actually starts a new version, a new instance of Visual Studio Code, which won't move until it fires up. But it says connected to remote, and I can actually open my VS Code server. I can look at my extensions. I can do all kinds of things. And sorry for the display here. It's not letting me move this window. There we go. There we are. So I can actually go in and I can open this. I can load things from my local machine and literally copy them into my Linux or SSH or container, which is kind of cool as well. So there's all kinds of options.
I love this, what it says. Your instant dev environment. That's what you're getting. Yeah. That's why. So if you go to GitHub, features, Codespaces, it's literally you get a dev environment any place you need it. And I think that's tremendous.
Yeah, there's been too many times when I've been trying to connect to a VM and trying to troubleshoot why a certain script won't run, or trying to just copy a bash script onto the VM. It's a lot of work. This way, I can actually remote into the VM and then connect into it and literally copy from up here into my virtual machine, edit the bash right here using IDE tools, save it on the VM, and then run it on the VM. So that's kind of cool. You can do that all from Visual Studio Code. So that's the first iteration of what Microsoft built for remoting into things. And I'm going to close that remote connection. All right. So the next instance of that, of course, was, well, now that we can connect to things, why do we have to use the IDE that's on the local machine? What if you need to have an IDE that you control? Let's say a large organization wants to control what extensions are running, wants to control how people use things, what access they have to different tools and packages inside of their organization. Plus, what if the average hobbyist just wants to have an IDE that they can use to work with GitHub without actually having to load anything on their local machine or anything like that? Well, Codespace is the answer for that. So it actually allows you to create a Codespace directly from GitHub and interact with it and play around with it. So let's actually show that. Let's see here. Let's go back to, this is the code that I actually cloned on my local machine. But this time, instead of cloning it on the local machine, let's actually open it with Codespaces. Now, I already did this to save a little bit of time. It does take 5 minutes the first time it sets it up because there's a lot of environment things it has to check and things like that. I have an option here. I'm going to do this in the browser because I want to make a point about something. But you can open this in Visual Studio Code as well. But I feel like we've already showed Visual Studio Code enough today. So let's just know what most people are going to use this for, which is I'm on that dodgy computer somewhere in someone else's office or somewhere in a hotel lobby back in the olden days when we used to travel. And, I need to access my code now and make some changes to it. We can actually do this here. Okay, let's open it again. Okay.
That's a binary.
Yeah, okay. Never mind. But anyway, why is it doing that? Hey, let's do
I've got
JSON
I can
file.
show.
There we go.
I can show something real quick too. I've got what I think is really cool already kind of set up. I went ahead into VS Code the other day just to prep for this, and I actually took one of my repos that I work on regularly and I put it in Codespaces.
Yeah.
And so now, just to show you, while sure it shows that it's grabbing everything from online, so it's making a remote connection and starting Codespaces. It's actually also, I believe that there's a local version that in the terminal you'll be able to see, and I believe the two are synced. Is that right?
Yes. So it literally contains when I hit that create dev spaces, it creates a container, and in my case,
right here, there's our container right there.
Yeah.
And if I do a pwd home Codespaces workspace merge crud, which is the name of the repo.
Yeah, exactly. So now one of the cool things about that is this is not your code on GitHub. Mm-hmm. This is a clone of your code inside that container, wherever that container is. In Jay's case, the container is on his local machine. In my case, my container is on GitHub. It's being stored in some storage on GitHub. So that's actually how that works. Let me zoom in a little more so you can actually see that. So I can actually go in here. I can edit things. As you can see, this is a JSON file. It does have some color coding. I believe it has type ahead and a few other features as well. But really, Microsoft is working on creating the same exact experience inside of Codespaces as you would have on a local machine. So this is cool because nothing has to be on your local machine. Everything can be here. And the reason why you want to clone and you want to edit the code directly is the same reason why you don't want to edit your code directly on GitHub. Because if there's a lot of people interacting and working on that code, you might have to do not just a push, but you might have to do a pull request or something else. So a whole bunch of people can have their own instance of this code working. And if you notice down here, the command line this time has a bunch of different options. So in this case, because this is a C# application, let's see if I can show an example of that. Here we go. So it actually knows this is a C# application and defaults to that. But there's all kinds of other tools you can use as well for doing that, which is kind of cool. So you can interact with it here through the command line. You can edit things using C#. And you can debug stuff. And when you're done, you can go over here and you can actually commit. So update from Codespaces. And when I do that, it's actually going to commit this back to my and so I'm lazy. I didn't stage this first, so it just always asks me if I want to commit it, and then I can actually sync. So it'll actually sync this, and it'll pull and push from my main branch of this repo out there. So it'll actually update that. And yeah, let's periodically run git fetch. Why not? So that's only for this one. So I'm doing this all in the browser. You see up here, this is my other browser windows. But and
you still got your terminal. You still got your terminal.
Still got the terminal. Still can do a lot of different things with the terminal, which is nice. And I can have full source control with Git over here. I've got some extensions here as well. I can check some of the extensions I have. They're not all 100% compatible on the browser for various reasons, various good reasons, but there are most of them available to you here. So you get a subset of your extensions that you already use in Visual Studio Code inside your code space here. So this is all cool stuff. I mean, you can edit this, you can do everything. So this is taking it to the next level remotely. You know, it's kind of cool. So that clone that Jay showed you on his local machine, he can also do the same thing, but post it up to, push it up to the repo as well. So that's kind of cool. Oh, one last thing I want to show you. The question I get sometimes, yeah, okay, that's cool, but what if you want to do pair programming in Codespaces? You can actually do this. You can actually do a live share, and it's going to start a collaboration session for me. Now, I didn't actually test this out with Jay, but it works fine. I've done it many times before. But over here, if I close the command window, I actually have an invite that I can send to folks.
Yes.
Please don't. I'm going to send it initially to Jay.
Sure.
Yeah, and Jay can actually go in and edit this.
Yep. Let me bring up I got something right here. Let me stop this and then share, because I was sharing how I was doing it in Visual Studio Code, but directly. But hey, here we go. Let me bring this up.
Yeah.
There. Hey. So let's join the live session from the browser. Hey, look at that.
There you go. So you're in there now.
So I'll just continue as anonymous for the moment. Anonymous coward. Those of you from the Slashdot days may get that little reference. But hey, yeah, I see. I'm just waiting for you to approve it, and
I'm going to accept rewrite for Jay. So, so basically, what we can do here, it started up a lot faster for him because he's not creating a new container. He's getting access to my container, and now we can work on the same code. And if I go ahead and edit, Jay, if you go into, let's see, there's a C# file.
Well, actually, what I did was if you look at it, I just kind of typed, "Hi, Brian."
Okay, yeah, no, Razor Assembly info.cs.
Yeah,
I wanted to show
just
how
wanted to show you that.
Yeah, and I've got it on my screen, and then I can say, "Hi, Jay." And if you see what Jay does, I can see what Jay is typing. It says over there, "Anonymous Coward is writing right now on my screen," and he can edit things as well. This is all in the browser. So we're doing pair programming. We're doing full development with an IDE in a browser directly from GitHub. And then if we want to change this, I'll just delete this stuff. And then I can actually code this, and I can send it up to I don't want to screw up that code. I can actually save this first. Yeah, it's saved. And then I can, once again, Jay's changes, and I can commit this. Oh, yeah, and this is another feature. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. This is something I love, and it's something I actually just learned about it recently. If you do git commit -- allow - empty, it will actually post no changes to your GitHub repo. Why would you want to do that? Because if you're using GitHub Actions and I post this, it will actually trigger the action. So some of you out there may have had to do this before. If I go into my repositories here, I'll go into this one that we're working with right now. If I go into actions, we've actually triggered a couple of actions here. I don't know. Maybe not.
Well, I think we should talk about this together another time. I'd really love to spend some more time with you on this. There's so many things that you've been able to show me today. We've blown through our time. We got 2 minutes left, and I want to make sure that everybody. So let's see how our poll worked out. It looks like the most of you are using Visual Studio Code, which it's not shocking. It's super, super popular. And also, Brian, you've got your show coming up, and I want everybody to know that the launch space.
Yes, the launch space. Yes, thank you very much. I've got a couple of links here. So the launch space, if you go to aka.ms/the launch space Azure CLI, Tuesday, March 11th, 2021, I'm going to show another cool thing you can do. Let me just show this real quick. I know we only have a second, but let me just go into the terminal real quick if I can.
We're up on it. We got 30
we're on it. But anyway, I just wanted to
Let's say our
there's
goodbyes.
some new CLI features that you're going to see that are very cool. March 11th, 2021 at 2 p.m. So thank you, Jay. This has been a blast. It went by too fast.
Absolutely. Let's give everybody the good wave goodbye. We will see you all next time here on Azure FunBytes. Thank you so much for watching it. We'll see you next time. Bye,
Thanks.
Brian. Thank you.